Hello and welcome to our 5G-ACIA web seminar. This is the second series of our web seminar with new content, new insights about interesting topics which address future technologies in combination with 5G. My name is Alexander Bentkus and I'm working for the ZBI, the German Manufacturers Association. And in the same time, I'm also the 5G-ACIA secretary, and I'm handling all of the day-to-day topics. And let me just try to switch on my camera. Yeah, hope you can see me now. And today's web seminar, we are going to handle key topics which are currently under discussion and also which has been at 5G-ACIA developed. So we are giving insights about key leading technologies from the automation side like TSN, Industry 4.0, digital twin, which fits together with 5G. These are topics which we are addressing in the second series. And with this series, we would like to open to you detailed insights about how 5G technology fits together with, with industrial 5G and automation technology. So we have today 1 hour, so we will have the presentation then shortly by our two speakers. And if you have any question or any comment, so you can just use the chat window. I will collect all of the questions and we will have at the end of the session some couple of minutes where we can then pick up your questions and then raise it directly to our speakers. Yeah, but coming to our today's topic, industrial 5G, where we are and our two speakers, and I would like to present our two speakers. So we have on the left side Dr. Andreas Mueller from Bosch. And Andreas Mueller is the head of communication and network technology at Bosch Research, and in the same time the 5G-ACIA general chair. And our second speaker is Dr. Afif Osseiran from Ericsson. He's director for industry engagements at Ericsson, and in the same time 5G-ACIA general vice chair. Yeah, with that introduction, I would like to hand over then to our two speakers, to Andreas and Afif, and of course looking forward for an interesting presentation from your side, and also welcome to you both, of course.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexander, and very warm welcome here also for me to everyone. Thanks for tuning in and for joining us today. This is the kickoff of the second web seminar series of 5G-ACIA. We had a very successful first series already last year. But of course, the things are evolving quickly. There has been a lot of progress since the last series. And today is the starting point basically of this new series where we would like to keep you up to date of what is going on regarding industrial 5G. And today is a little bit an overview presentation that will be given by Afif and myself. And then during the next issues of the series, we will deep dive into selected aspects a little bit. So we have divided this web seminar into 4 parts. I will start with some fundamentals, a brief recap, basically why 5G really matters for manufacturing, and also give a brief overview of what 5G-ACIA is actually doing. Then I will hand over to Afif. He will then touch upon different topics that we've been working on in the last couple of months, so that you see where we currently really are. Then I will take over again. I will say something about open challenges and also look a little bit ahead already. So what will come with beyond 5G and at some point maybe also 6G. So what is important here from the perspective of 5G-ACIA. And then Afif will finally conclude the presentation part, also referring to some additional information in case that you are interested. But let's start with a short review of the fundamentals, and I will keep this relatively short, simply because many of you might be aware of this already. If not, and if you are interested in learning more about the fundamentals, of course, we have a lot of material already on our website, white papers and so on, where you can find additional information. And we would also be happy always to deep dive then in a separate round, maybe with you. So why is 5G actually relevant for the industrial domain? The reason behind this is basically very simple. we have this major change with the developments towards 5G, that it's unlike the previous generations of mobile communications, not just about connecting phones and connecting people, but really about connecting all kinds of things in the Internet of Things with all these new application domains, which includes manufacturing, but also other areas like automotive, agriculture, healthcare, and so on. And this is enabled, of course, by completely new capabilities that 5G offers, like this low latency, high reliability, high data rate, integrated positioning with high accuracy, and so on. Now, at the same time, we have the developments towards Industry 4.0. And this year, we celebrated actually the 10th anniversary of Industry 4.0. So also this is not a completely new topic. But also, even though it's a revolution, it takes some time until we really get where we want to be. And the ultimate goal of Industry 4.0 is to increase the flexibility primarily of production, and connectivity per se is a key enabling technology for that in order to establish cyber-physical production systems. And now it's quite natural to bring both of these developments together, so to use 5G in the factories of the future. And this way we can lift Industry 4.0 to the next level and achieve unprecedented levels of flexibility, efficiency, productivity, and ease of use. And there's a lot of potential, of course, behind this. For example, if we can increase the productivity of a factory only by 1% or so, this is really huge numbers already in terms of euros or dollars. So there's a lot of value to be unlocked and to be leveraged using 5G. If we look here a little bit more into detail, what use cases are possible, here you can see some use case categories. 5G may be very relevant if you want to connect mobile or portable assets like automated guided vehicles, forklifts, or whatever. For connecting moving or rotating parts, where we're using slip rings or track chains today, be it a robotic arm or something similar. It's a suitable technology for connecting all kinds of sensors and also massive sensor networks, for example, for predictive maintenance, condition-based monitoring, and so on. Human-machine interaction is a very important field, augmented reality, virtual reality, and similar applications, positioning and tracking. Positioning integrated into the very same infrastructure, which is then very nice. And knowing where things are is always a very valuable information in manufacturing. It's an enabler for a highly modular production, and also very much suitable, of course, for retrofit solutions. So if you want to upgrade existing machines, which often are used for 10, 15, or 20 years, and if you want to upgrade them, for example, by putting some additional sensors there, so that's very easy with a wireless technology like 5G. Now, the biggest benefit of all maybe is that 5G has the potential to become a convergent solution in the factory of the future. That means for different use cases, there might be alternative solutions available also today, but there's not a single solution that basically can do everything for us and realize all these wireless use cases, but 5G promises to do just this. And this, of course, is then beneficial because then we don't have to run and operate 5 or 6 different networks in a factory, but ideally only 5G, at least as a wireless technology. And this brings then also the complexity and hopefully also the total cost of ownership down. So what is the role of 5G-ACIA? 5G-ACIA is the global forum for bringing all relevant stakeholders together in this emerging industrial 5G ecosystem. And this primarily includes the so-called OT industry, the operational technology industry, so the classical machine builders, factory owners, and also industrial component suppliers. And on the other hand, the ICT industry with the network operators, infrastructure vendors, and also chip companies. And the overall goal of 5G-ACIA is basically to drive and shape the developments towards industrial 5G in order to make sure that it eventually becomes a major success. And this covers different aspects. It starts with the establishment of a common language. We are actively influencing and shaping standardization, for example, in 3GPP, but also other organizations. We want to jointly understand how we can make optimally use of 5G in the industrial domain. We are discussing about certification aspects and similar topics. And it's also a lot about ecosystem building, basically, and also promotion of industrial 5G, which is one of the reasons why we are having also this web seminar today. 5G-ACIA has been established in April 2018 with a kickoff event at the Hannover Messe, the Hannover Trade Show, which is the largest fair for the industrial domain in that year. You can see here a picture from the kickoff event. Obviously, at the beginning, it was still a fairly small group with 26 founding members. As of today, we are 85 members, and the development is still increasing, basically. So soon we will be able to announce some new members. That's the last picture that we have taken to the last physical plenary meeting that we had already more than a year ago. This was in Coventry in the UK in 2020. And you can see at that time, we have significantly grown, and we even had to have the meeting in a rugby stadium in order to have enough space to accommodate all people here. So it's not complete what you can see in the picture. So really a success story from that point of view, and it's really the goal of 5G-ACIA to bring all relevant stakeholders together. Here you can see an overview of the current members that we have. It's a very good mixture between the OT industry and the ICT industry, and also from different regions around the world. If you look at the membership development, it's a steady growth over the year, more or less a linear increase, which is very nice. And even the current pandemic did not really change that. And here you can see now the different member types that we have. So a little bit more ICT members than OT members, but it's still, I think, in a good balance. We have, of course, also some academic members, universities supporting us, and also some others which do not really fit into one or the other category. So that's a brief intro. We also would like to have this web seminar a little bit interactive. That's why we included a couple of live polls where we would, or where we are interested in your feedback. And it's the first one now, so it's always good to understand who actually is in the audience. So therefore, the first question to you would be, which stakeholder group do you belong to? And in most cases, you should see now a pop-up window where you can select one option, either ICT, if you are from the ICT industry, OT, if you are more from the industrial domain. Academia would mean that you are from a university, research institute, something like this, and others, of course, if whatever, you do not really fit into one of these categories. For example, if you are a government representative or whatever, so that could. And then we will quickly see the results, hopefully, and now we can see it. At least I can see it, I hope everybody else as well. So obviously the majority did not reply. So it would be my request, makes it more interesting for us, maybe also for all of you to join these polls. But then we have quite a number of participants from the ICT sector, also quite some academic participants, so 22 from ICT, 11 from academia, and then more or less the same number, 9% from OT and others. Okay, that was the first question. That's always interesting to see. The other thing that is always interesting to see is where you actually are from. So it would be the second question, and no worries, then we will continue with the presentation. So here we are just interested to understand a bit which region you are from. I just noticed that we are missing one important region, which is Europe. So we obviously missed to include this here. Apologies for that. So if you are from Europe, and this might apply, of course, to some of you, maybe you just select Australia. So we combine Australia with Europe together. And now we can see the results. So yeah, many participants from Australia, 48%, but I said this includes Europe as well. That's rather plausible. Then I'm very happy about a good participation from Asia as well, 21%. No answer from 29%. So here, please wake up and join in the next two polls that we still have. And we certainly can still improve a little bit on Africa and also the Americas, but we also have to take into account that the time is maybe not the best time for North and South America, especially if you look at the West Coast. Okay, so that was just some short all in between. If we continue with the presentation, so here just a brief overview again of the structure of 5G-ACIA. This has not really changed since the establishment in 2018. We still have 5 working groups that you can see here. First one, focusing on use cases requirements. Then we are working on spectrum and operating models also for so-called private or non-public 5G networks. We have architecture and technology, where we are also looking at integration aspects, how to integrate 5G into the existing infrastructure in existing technologies in the industrial domain. Working group 4 here dealing with liaisons and dissemination so that we are closely aligned with other initiatives. And also here we have this promotional activities, and also the organization of this web seminar was part of this working group. And we have working group 5 here on validation and tests, where we are running a testbed program right now and also doing certification related work, for example. We will deep dive a little bit more into these topics in the following. We have then once a year general assembly. Here we decide on our working procedures. We have elections and so on, and then 4 to 5 times a year plenary meetings where we review the progress, where we take decisions on new work items, on approval of results, and so on. And we have the board, of course, which then oversees the overall activities of 5G-ACIA and the 5G-ACIA office with Alexander and some other colleagues supporting the day-to-day operations. So yeah, we entitled this web seminar, Industrial 5G, Where Are We? And this should already, this slide here, give a little bit an overview of that. If we look at the world outside, so then 5G certainly is a reality already. So the public networks are being upgraded to 5G. There are more and more 5G handsets and devices available. But it primarily holds at this point in time for consumer 5G, so the more evolutionary path. So that's really a reality already, and people are already starting to earn money. But we also have to say the potential for the ICT industry, for example, to increase the revenue is very limited with 5G, because we have saturation also in the ARPU, in the average return per user, and this will not really change significantly with 5G. Now, if you look at industrial 5G, which is the focus of 5G-ACIA, of course, it's a little bit different. So here, it's not a reality yet, at least not, there's no mass adoption yet, but this is also for good reasons. Here it's not really evolutionary, it's more revolutionary. We did not really use mobile communications in a factory before. It takes a little bit more time. I will briefly recap again why. But then there's a lot of promises behind this once we reach the actual goal to really increase the revenue for all stakeholders, for the ICT industry, because they may serve these industrial customers, but of course also for the industrial side to really increase the efficiency, productivity, and so on, along the line with alliance with Industry 4.0, as I mentioned at the beginning. So we just have to be a bit more patient and wait a bit longer and make sure that we also reach the goal. And therefore, there's certainly still a lot of work to be done towards industrial 5G. We are not there yet, even if 5G in general is already a reality. But I think this is not unique for manufacturing, but it applies to many other vertical domains which are now addressed by 5G as well. If you look at healthcare, agriculture, and so on, so there is a similar story. So what are the reasons? Why are we lagging behind, if you want, behind the consumer domain? We started later. 5G-ACIA has been established in 2018, so only 3 years ago. And it takes some time to really build up the know-how and to discuss all the things. Many key features that might make a difference for the industrial domain come only with release 16 or release 17 in 3GPP. So I'm thinking about ultra-reliable, low-latency communication, support for time-sensitive networking, and so on. So this really starts with release 16, and we don't have the chipsets, the infrastructure components, and so on available yet. Maybe later this year, or then at least next year, this will change. Also, support for special needs takes time. So there's, for example, the need for non-public networks. And here we just see the developments now towards new operating and business models. Also here, the entire ecosystem has to adapt. Performance validation is still ongoing. There are now more and more trials and test beds popping up, which are very important because you have to prove that 5G can really deliver on its promise in a real-world production environment, which is a very special and also challenging propagation environment in some sense. There are different innovation cycles between the ICT industry and the OT industry. So typically the OT side tends to be a bit slower, if you want, compared to these more 2-year life cycles that we have in the ICT industry. So here the different worlds have to align. The ecosystem has to grow from scratch. There is not an ecosystem of devices and components and so on available in the industrial domain yet. So this still needs to be built up. And we also have a little bit of chicken egg challenge, which has to be overcome, and where also 5G-ACIA can play an important role by simply bringing all relevant stakeholders together and establishing this trust basically in each other. So here will be very quick on this slide. This shows a little bit the evolution again towards the developments of 5G. So from my perspective, it started basically around 2012. In Europe, there was the famous METIS project, which was the start of 5G research in Europe, at least. Then there was kickoff workshop in 5GBP in 2015, and only in 2018, so 6 years basically after the initial research activities started towards 5G, the industrial domain became active. We established 5G-ACIA, but it's one of the reasons why we are lagging behind a little bit, right? So we have to catch up here now as the OT industry. Soon after the establishment of 5G-ACIA, we became a 5GBP market representation partner representing the views of the industrial domain towards 5GBP, which we appreciate very much. Then 2019, the first standards have been completed with these 15, still with a strong focus on the consumer domain. And then basically we really prepared a lot of contributions also in 5G-ACIA. We had many discussions on different aspects, be it channel traffic models, non-public networks. A lot of this work went into release 16 already, or will be part of release 17. So release 16 had a very strong focus on the industrial IoT. And that's where we currently are, basically. So many things have been done already. Afif will now outline some selected aspects, especially of what we have accomplished already in more detail. But there's still more work to be done. Just can reiterate here what I've already said in the previous slide. And this is also what we will briefly outline a little bit in more detail then later on. But that's it basically now from my side for the time being. And with that, I would like to hand over now to Afif to give us an overview of some of the key achievements so far. Afif.
Okay, thank you, Andreas. Yeah, let me move on now to guide you what have we done so far, and starting from the beginning, from the launch of 5G-ACIA, but I will focus, of course, mainly what we have done the last 6 months, and will stay on a very high level. We'll have much more in-depth webinars later on this year, next month, and during summer, where you will hear more about different aspects, and I will point out one. I'll come back to them. From the top in the past, you can see it the right basically side of the slides. Lately, we have released the TSN study, and I have a couple of slides on it later on. What we have done in the past, at least, as well, the integration of industrial internet with 5G. This is in case you have attended the last year webinar, I've covered it on a high level. Then, in addition to that, the exposure, how do we expose certain aspects important, for example, for a factory owner. I have a couple of slides later on as well on it. Two aspects, not technical, but this is related to show what we do as a 5G-ACIA basically members, the 5G-ACIA testbed, where for the first time we have announced at the Hanover Fair, we have endorsed some of the testbed, and these are really described, and you will hear from me, I mean, just immediately after. We are, of course, reaching out all relevant forums, relevant in terms basically to 5G-ACIA, of course, in terms of topics. And we have signed, I mean, many agreements in order to make sure we complement and we pave the way, of course, to the 5G industrial ecosystem. Then there are recently, we released a study or a paper on performance testing. So how to recommendation a framework, how testing should be done to allow the results or the test to be comparable. And in the past, we have done studies on various aspects. Security, you can see here, non-public network deployment, come back to it, traffic and radio channel characterizations, basic test and validation aspects, use cases and requirements. And then what is important in terms of you don't see it as an external. We have several internal activities within 5G-ACIA. The first one, what we have done on 5G spectrum overview during 2020, and then lately on comparing 5G and Wi-Fi 6. The study on 5G spectrum overview, this will continue, or this is basically, we had one in 2020, and we have another one in 2021. And some of the additional activities like the testbed, this is, of course, this is a living activity where we will keep it as long, of course, as the audience is there. What we are doing now and what is happening. So you can see this is, I mean, a short list. It doesn't cover it all, just an example. For example, edge computing, use cases, aspects, integration with OPCOA. Many of these aspects will be mentioned later on by Andreas. Now let me jump in to the testbed and summarize what have we done lately. In case you have attended the Hanover Fair, you have noticed there has been a presentation on these endorsed testbed. So 5G-ACIA, for the first time, we have endorsed testbed, and there are 4 of them, as you can see here on the slide. This is as an example, starting from the top left. This is the first endorsed testbed is by ABB and Ericsson, and where a 5G network has been deployed, and the intention, of course, of all testbed to show that 5G support the industrial 5G use cases. For example, I mean, it could be TSN, for example, collaborating robots, for example, AR, VR in a factory. So or it can be, of course, a mixture. The second testbed, as you can see on the right side, top right, this is another testbed, and this one in Germany, not in Sweden, and the Bosch factory, semiconductor factory. The third one in the bottom left, this is, you might have seen it. This is not only, I would say, a testbed, this is a network, which in Aachen, in Germany, it's called Industrial Campus Europe. It covers several buildings, an area of 1 square kilometer, if I recall well. And within these area, of course, there are different labs and buildings, and within of it, we have Fraunhofer Institute with Ericsson, U-Blocks, and Marpos has been demonstrating several use cases, including basically faulty detection, for example, in process. On the bottom right, this is the fourth endorsed testbed, and this is again in Germany. So the three of them in Germany, and the first one in Sweden, and this is in Munich. This is Huawei with the FKA Institute in Germany, where a 5G standalone has been installed, radio and core. And again, to demonstrate, for example, we have a production line, plus AGV moving around for control detection. So this is in a nutshell about the endorsed testbed. This is just the beginning. We'll announce more in June this year, and we have more on the pipe currently under evaluation. So now if we move on to which forums we are dealing with, and this is very important to complement some of the activities we are doing. As you can see, there are 3 continents mainly. It's Europe, US, and Asia. And lately we have, for example, signed an MOU with VDMA in Germany. We have signed another one with OPC Foundation. As you can see here, is also under the US flag. And OPC, of course, UAE, this is an important activity. Then we have signed an MOU with the GTI, with MNOs. This is MNO operation based in China. So we have a diversity kind of collaboration trying to address different aspects. You can see, of course, FFPA. This is they are focusing on wireless technology and not necessarily not really a 5G. And then we have the local alliances we are dealing with, like the 5G Forum in Korea, the 5G MF in Japan, the 5G India Forum in India. Okay, so let's now move on more to the technical aspects, and especially what we have. I will start very shortly if we have done in the past. This is, you have seen it many times, but for those of you that are attending the webinar for the first time, just to refresh the memory, the deployment of a 5G non-public network can be done in different ways, and one of the way on the left side you can see is about standalone, meaning or a private, some people might call it, or dedicated standalone, where you have a network completely independent of what's happening, for example, from a public network. And another extreme flavor on the right hand side, where you have the network completely being part of a public network, or for example, a mobile network operator will provide a service, both the radio access and the core. And in between, you can have different flavors. Of course, you can have share the radio access and or the core. And these are the examples being shown in between example 2 and under further options. What else we have covered? I mean, we have, you have seen it last year, industrial Ethernet. These are brownfield technology. This technology are here to stay. Remember the life cycle in OT, the expectation is for 20 years. And that's why we looked into how these technology can be eventually integrated into 5G. And defined, for example, where you have typically, sensors, actuators, controllers, on the production floor, and the findings are, I would say, almost straightforward. It is easy to be integrated on the IP layer, but more complicated, the integration would be on the Ethernet layers. Many of these technologies, if you say, Profinet, Profibus, for example, EtherCAT, are expected basically to see like a TSN as, I would say, as a layer in between. If this is the assumption, then it will be easy to integrate these brown technology with 5G, and you will see it later, because we currently the assumptions and also based on our finding, TSN can be well integrated into 5G. Another aspect on the right hand side is security, and this is of course very important. We have described, how security is being perceived, how, the mechanism in OT versus, ICT, where it relies, in eSIM and SIM, whereas, from the OT industry it relies especially on the IEC, standards. For example, here we are mentioning 62443. So let's keep on moving, and these are now I'll cover the 3 latest white papers that has been released, the performance testing. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we have established a framework, a kind of, to be able to have a recommendation. This has especially, the objective has been at the beginning to make a recommendation for our endorsed testbed, which, for example, parameters should be checked and how these are defined and how the system can be should be checked. And the parameters can be, latency, can be the number of devices, can be, the data rate. And this is, has been well defined. So if any of the testbed is doing performance testing, there is a cookbook, I would say. It follows this cookbook, and it would be easy to compare if another, for example, testbed has done the same. And I refer you simply to the white paper to know more about it. You can read more about it. Then the last 2 aspects here, I'll go slightly in depth, not so much. And for a simple reason, the TSN time sensitive networking, there will be in the webinar. Also, this has been highlighted at the Hanover Fair. But still, this is a very important topic. Let me spend a couple of minutes here. Time sensitive networking, if you take into account releases 16 and 17, based on our assessment, so 5G simply support all the essential features. And so I here listed some of the features, of course, in terms, time synchronization, filtering, redundancy. You could have priority in terms of traffic. If you have different, of course, like real-time, non-real-time traffic. And just let me show you, an example, and this shown in the next slide. how this is being done. So I will not really describe the figure here. You can see different kind of use cases of for TSN, where from the floor it's communicating up to the edge cloud or the central room. What is important here to you as a retain, 5G can act as a bridge in between, for example, two TSN devices, as you can see here. And it depends what is your use cases. Is it controller to controller? Is it device to compute? If you have it, basically you want to do the computation in the cloud. And in this, it supports the important configurations as it listed here, on the right-hand side, traffic priority. As I said, if you would like to do, schedulings, if you would like to do time sync, you have here timestamps. You can see two clocks, one on the top on the central loom, and this is fully basically synchronized with the clock, and the bottom basically this is on the floor level. And please, I encourage you to read the paper. The paper is lengthy, and listen to the TSN as well, webinar that will be done late in June, if I may. We'll come back to it later on. And lastly, let me spend a couple of minutes now on the exposure, and this is also an important aspect. Why is it an important aspect? Because cellular network is complex when it comes the operational side, what we call OSS BSS. So what is being exposed, this is is extremely complex and does not really fit if you would like to do a small kind of local deployment. And that's why from 5G-ACIA perspective, from the beginning, we have thought how to make it simple, because there is also only certain functionalities are needed. For example, for a factory owner, and so it's almost like I don't say plug and play, but to make it as simple as a plug and play. And here basically you can see certain illustrations, and I have in the next slide I've listed some of these functionalities where you would like to expose. So what you would like to know if you are a factory owner, you would like to go to know, of course, where are your devices. You would like to know if you can regroup, group your devices, give them certain rights. Then you would like to be able to connect and to basically onboard and provision the devices. And not only that, you would like certain aspects to be able to monitor, for example, the QoS of the network where these devices are connected to, and then to be able to do system repair. But certain aspects, are connected to the entity operating the network. So it should be kind of, if not the factory owner, then it should be kind of deal between the factory owner and the entity operating the network to be able to do that. So this was in a nutshell what the past activities where we have covered, and there will be as well an exposure webinar later on this year on exposure. So now I'll hand over to the last part of our presentations to Andreas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Afif, for this nice, very brief overview of different relevant activities that we have had in the past. It's really just a snapshot to make this clear again of the things we have been working on and on the things that are important. And as Afif has said, so there will be some web seminars coming up where we deep dive a little bit into some of the topics, and also with a lot of material already available on our website, for instance, that you can check. So now we still would like to highlight some open issues and also a little bit the long-term perspective. Before we do that, we've prepared 2 more poll questions, so it's your turn again. What is probably relevant and interesting to all of us is the actual view. I mean, what relevance 5G really has for the factory of the future. We have heard now many things. Of course, we are enthusiasts about this. What would be our next question to you? So how important do you actually consider 5G for the factory of the future. And the poll is coming up. You can see it's here different options. You could say extremely important, if you're fully convinced that it's highly relevant, somewhat important. It means yes, it has some value, but it's maybe not the biggest thing. Neutral is you don't know. And then, of course, you could also say it in the negative sense, so it's not very important or not important at all. And yeah, again, 35% did not really reply, but all the others, or the wide majority, certainly sees a high relevance in 5G for manufacturing. 42% think it's extremely important, 23% at least somewhat important, and 2% are rather neutral, but there is nobody in this call who thinks it's not important. But also, to be honest, it's not very surprising, because if you think it's not important, maybe you would not join such a web seminar here. Okay, but that was the first question. And then the second question, and it's the last one then for this web seminar, is about a timeline. That's why I just did not say what my expectation is when it starts. But here we want to ask you now, so what you think, when we will see a more widespread adoption of 5G manufacturing. Of course, this will not be a step function. It will be a ramp-up phase, basically. And the question here is, when will the ramp-up phase start? And you can see here different options, starting from 2021, which would be this year, 2025, or you could also say maybe even later than that. If you still have serious doubts, you could also say it will never take off. And of course, don't know is also a valid answer. It's a little bit looking into the crystal ball. Nobody can maybe really predict this very accurately, but at least it's very interesting to see what the ecosystem in general thinks about this, because this gives us some indication, right, what could be a good and realistic time frame. And again, Alexander and colleagues are counting the feedback, and we can see the result. So 30% did not provide any answer. A majority of the feedback that we got says 2023, 25%. Some a bit 11% more confident and already believe that next year will mark the beginning. And then we have still some who think it's a bit later. From my personal point of view, I think that makes a lot of sense and would be in line with my expectation. And maybe it also depends on where you're looking at, because manufacturing is a very broad area. So for example, in the process industry, we might have a different timeline than for discrete manufacturing. But my personal prediction is also end of 2022, beginning of 2023, when we will see the start of a ramp-up phase. But it's just my personal view, and I also don't have the crystal ball. Okay, so we don't have too much time left, so just 2 more slides from my side here. So that's a little bit an overview again of some ongoing activities. Afif briefly touched upon some of those already. So we recently started also more activities towards edge computing, and also the combination of 5G with edge computing. Especially the combination, of course, makes a lot of sense. So we can start then offloading intelligence from a device like an automated guided vehicle or a mobile robot to a local cloud, and then, for example, close the control loop over 5G. And here we are discussing relevant use cases and requirements, and we are also planning now to come up with more a new activity, potentially focusing on architectural aspects and things like this. So this really optimally fits together. We also have an active or an ongoing activity looking at the integration of 5G with OPC-UA. OPC-UA, in case that you're not so familiar with the OT industry, is basically a standard middleware solution for the industrial IoT. And also here the question is, how does this optimally fit together? We have done some work already with TSN, which is below the OPC-UA layer. And OPC-UA is now the current activity that we have, so that this fits very well together, and that's also one of the reasons why we have signed this MOU that Afif has briefly mentioned with the OPC Foundation, which is taking the lead in the developments towards OPC-UA. Device certification is a very important topic. Here we have a couple of activities ongoing, also looking at specific requirements, again, for example, but also then on basically special needs for certification for industrial 5G devices. There are many organizations already doing some kind of certification, and there are also existing ways and approaches to certification, but on the other hand, we have some special requirements and constraints in manufacturing. I'm thinking about safety and security issues and similar things. Temperature ranges are different from the consumer domain. And we have to see that all this is properly addressed. So we are currently identifying gaps that we'll still see with existing certification frameworks and organizations, and then we want to initiate the right activities so that also here this is very well addressed. So that's why we are also reaching out and interacting with organizations like the GCF, the Global Certification Forum, and others in order to be well aligned here. The same goes for devices in general. Here, we are collecting requirements from the perspective of a device and also looking at architectural aspects. We started a recent activity, I mentioned this already, more towards a market study, so that's more a non-technical activity, where we now want to start a couple of surveys. First of all, among our members, in the long term, maybe also including the wider ecosystem, it needs to be further discussed, but to assess and track the industrial 5G market and also to come up with accurate forecasts. And finally, what we're also doing, and we started this basically already with the Hannover trade show, Hannover Fair this year, that we have our own roadshow. That means that with more and more contributions showing how 5G is used in manufacturing in real world systems and applications. So that's not just PowerPoint presentations anymore, but we have the test beds where we can report to people, but we also have a couple of demonstrations and other work that our members have been working on. And at the Hannover Trade Show this year, we gave a short overview of some activities, and we will continue this at other similar events in future. Also, this is just a snapshot of some of the ongoing activities, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of feeling of what 5G-ACIA is doing. And now here I will be very quick, otherwise we're running out of time. We also thought already a little bit about what is our view on the long-term development of industrial 5G, because many activities are starting now looking at beyond 5G and some call it already 6G. As I mentioned before, we still have to do a lot of work towards making the industrial 5G vision become a reality. On the other hand, we want to make sure that these developments that are primarily starting in the academic community at this point in time are going into the right direction. So that's why we identified 10 key aspects for the long-term development of industrial 5G. We briefly summarized this in a position paper. That's the essence of it. So we say, okay, of course, the vertical industries should remain in the focus from the very beginning, maybe even more than it was the case for 5G, manufacturing being, of course, the most relevant and most promising one from our perspective, at least. Then also the non-public networks, that's something that started with 5G, and also with 6G, this should continue and should become in the center point of many discussions from the very beginning. In 5G, this started also a little bit later, so that's why I call it here non-public networks 2.0. What is very important, there is a lot of potential, is not just in the user plane, but also in the management plane. So sophisticated self-management, for example, that we can have a very high level of resiliency, but also ease of use for these non-public networks in a factory, that it's getting much easier to operate them, to update them, to manage them. Backwards compatibility is very important, and that's because of the long lifetimes, long life cycles of industrial equipment, often 20 years or more. But it also means if we invest in 5G today, we want to be sure that we can rely on the infrastructure and the system also for the years to come. So ideally, we have at least 20 years of backwards compatibility. That also means if something goes wrong, that we can simply replace a component without having to completely redesign a production line, for example. And that's, of course, something that is a little bit new to the ecosystem, because in the classical ICT world, it's a bit more relaxed, maybe. Flexibility and modularity to really address the different needs of different manufacturers. I mentioned this before, process industry can be very different from discrete manufacturing. So there's not one solution that is optimal for manufacturing, and there can be many solutions for different types of manufacturing, and a highly flexible and modular architecture may help here. Of course, there are also is potential for advanced quality of service capabilities. There are use cases where we could even make use of lower latencies below 1 millisecond, or maybe even a higher positioning accuracy in the centimeter level range. That's also not to be forgotten. We see that open interfaces and full virtualization will play a more important role. So with the developments towards Open RAN, for example, so this certainly will continue. It may play an even more important role with the long-term evolution of industrial 5G. Also, additional functionalities might be integrated. There are discussions about moving to higher frequencies in the so-called terahertz regime. And if you are using a system in that frequency range, you can also do completely new things with the system. So that you have, for example, integrated radar functionalities, imaging, and so on. And of course, there are quite a number of things that you could do with this in a factory, like quality inspection and so on. Sustainability and efficiency certainly should be considered as well, in line with the sustainability goals of the United Nations. And also we should think about making it easier for verticals to get directly engaged in 3GPP, which is, even for very large vertical companies, still a challenge today. So I will keep it as short as this, since we are running out of time. And now I would like to hand over to Afif again for basically the final words of the presentation, and he will give you a hint where you can find additional information. Afif.
Okay, thank you, Andreas. Yeah, just extremely briefly, you know, our website has been, of course, is constantly updated, and where you can see the latest information. Of course, you have the white papers, but in addition to that, we do have the videos now. For example, what we have shown at the Hanover Fair, we're including demos from many of our partners. So we encourage you to go there and look at these videos, and of course download the white papers as well. And the latest one was Beyond the 5G Position paper. Then a short promotion, what will happen next. So this was the second, basically, I would say, series we are having. And this is only the introduction today. We have done it, of course, some of you on a short notice, but now you will have time to register for the coming ones. The next one will be on TSN on the 17th of June. We try to time it to happen in the middle of the week, Wednesdays, and at 2 p.m. Central European time. And in July, there will be another one on digital twins, and in September on exposure. And this is what also I covered in my part on the activities we are doing at 5G-ACIA. And now we have a few minutes left. I will hand over, you know, to Alexander to see, you know, what kind of questions we've got, you know, during the presentation.
Yeah, indeed. We have received a couple of questions, and that's why I would like to handle it directly to you. And one question, maybe Afif, it's your turn. It's dedicated to one of our 5G-ACIA deliverable is regarding the channel model. And here's a question: if we have found a channel model for typical industrial scenarios, if you could maybe give a comment on that.
Yeah, we had actually one of the white paper. I mean, I would say a simple channel model for manufacturing. And then as well, we did a license to 3GPP asking to work on more detailed channel models, but so far I haven't seen that.
So it's still under work at 3GPP and not
Exactly,
one dedicated. Yeah. Okay. But 5G-ACIA, as understood, has provided some valuable insights about it. So it's still ongoing. Yeah, then a second question maybe for Andreas, which is more dedicated on the general roadmap, which you have shown, is about the availability. So that's, of course, the key question. And this also reflects the feedback based on our poll. So when we have commercial products available for industrial 5G, not covering only automation products, so end devices, but also products which are from the ICT side, so dedicated for industrial applications. If you could give some information about it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can briefly share my view. I briefly mentioned this also during the presentation. So it really starts to get interesting with BD16 once we have basic support for time-sensitive networking, low latency, high reliability, and so on. And there's a clear roadmap for the chipsets in the infrastructure. The first chipset has been announced already. Then it takes some time until we have modules, and then we are basically ready to integrate such a module in a mobile robot, automated guided vehicle, whatever. And of course, the infrastructure side will follow. So we are in this process. We're not there yet, but the first announcements are there. Therefore, I think end of 2022 is maybe a realistic assumption so that we are ready to go. But then it will take some time until this ecosystem of especially industrial 5G devices grows, right? There will be not from one day to the other 200 components that you can use as a factory owner. It will start with maybe some HEVs and similar equipment. And then over time, we will see more and more coming up. And it's really a process that will take time. But Release 16 is most likely the version of the standard when it really starts to take off.
So you mean with Release 16, we have then a ramp up of industrial 5G products, components, and it will be a soft ramp up. So step by step, products will integrate 5G capabilities and then enlarge the ecosystem for that. And then I have another question, maybe to both of you, and this is also related to some interesting applications regarding real-time location services with 5G for HEVs and AMR. If you can give some more information about how you see the aspect of the real-time locationing services with 5G and what are the limits, capabilities. So if you could also give a comment.
Yeah, maybe I can start, but if you can maybe tell even better then. But I mean, positioning is something that is a focus topic now with Release 17 in the standardization. So we can already do positioning with previous generations, but the accuracy is very limited. So in order to do something really meaningful, especially looking at HEVs and AMR, as you mentioned, so then we probably have to wait until Release 17 is available. And Release 17, the standard will be ready in Q1 2022. And then, of course, it takes again some time until we will see the corresponding products and so on. But the target is in the order of 30 centimeters or so. But maybe Afif can tell you better since he's...
Yeah, for release, actually, of course, if you only rely on the features and release and 3GPP releases, then you can release 15. It's a couple of meters. If you go down to Release 16, is a few basically dozen of centimeters, and then in Release 17, if you complemented, I mean, maybe was a MIMO, was a massive MIMO, then the intention is to go back basically maybe to reach even the maybe the 10 centimeters latent position, basically precision.
Yeah, thank you for the questions from the participants. And if you have more questions dedicated to 5G-ACIA, you can always contact us at info5gacia.org. And also, of course, thanks for your participation today. And this is, as Andreas mentioned and Afif, this is the beginning of our second series. So we will have interesting topics which are following. And all of this and the webinar today will be also available on our website soon. So it has been recorded, and then you can also review it again. Yeah, with that, just again the information. So the next web seminar will be on the 17th of June, where we give then detailed insight about how 5G with TSN technologies fits together. And here with experts from the ICT side and OT side who are presenting together. And very interesting stuff, as TSN is from the in the automation side an interesting technology for time-sensitive networks, and this is exactly a perfect match with 5G. Again, thanks a lot for your participation, and have a good day and see you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.